Hello everybody and welcome back to Doctor Who Breakdowns. Today we'll be finishing off the second story of Season 1, The Daleks. I'll be covering 3 episodes of this breakdown, so it's going to be naturally a little bit longer. This will happen for the final part of any story with an odd number of parts, like this one. To begin the expedition, we return to Dalek City as a Dalek informs the leader of something very interesting. They have replicated the anti-radiation drugs they confiscated from Susan, and have already begun vaccinations in groups. Well, that was quick. Also topical. Maybe they can give us some tips. Anyway, they've also been spying on their escapees, reviewing surveillance photos of the 4 at their camp at the falls. With this confirmed alliance, it's obvious an attack is on the way. If Ian has anything to say about it, that certainly will be true. However, he's having a bit of trouble. Apart from revenge, they really have no reason to fight. Nothing to gain from it. Barbara isn't quite so resigned.
We'll be prisoners here unless we can think of some way of getting that fluid link back from the Daleks.
I am quite well aware of that,
And you know
Barbara.
very well they'll find a way out of their city.
I know.
Well, you know they will.
Wow, never make Barbara angry, kids. Also, thanks for proving people who get panic attacks aren't weak. Away from the morality-based lover's quarrel.
I will not ask the Thals to sacrifice themselves for us. I'm sorry, Barbara. I just can't do it.
Ian, why can't you see?
Susan asked her grandfather if he's made another fluid link. Unfortunately, even if he could, which he can't, the TARDIS really is out of mercury. Way to make an honest man out of your captain, old girl. The doctor then expresses thankfulness that Chesterman isn't vindictive.
Well, I will be if you don't get my name right. It's Chesterton.
Still, Barbara very much isn't in the mood for camaraderie. Apparently the threat of being stranded on a hostile, irradiated alien planet forever really ticks some people off. Unlike Ian, however, she is very willing to get the Thals to help them fight their way to the fluid link. The first Doctor, a few regenerations of character development behind New Who,
They can shoot me dead, but the moral high ground is mine.
very much agrees with her, already plotting what tactical advantages an army with feet would have over the Daleks.
The Thals won't fight. They're against war.
My dear child, this is no time for morals. They must fight for us.
Going to war to get a gizmo back seems like the perfect time for morals. Still, at least the Doctor and Barbara bond a bit, arguing with Ian's immovable self-righteousness.
Young lady, I've been underestimating you.
After playing a really low blow card,
I'm sorry. I'm not having anyone's death on my conscience.
Except mine.
Barbara convinces Ian to see things a different way, albeit not her way.
The only way the Thals can fight is if they themselves want to.
Susan agrees, and I'm Team Ian for the Civil War too. After one last parting shot,
Oh, you're doing it. Playing with words.
We need action, not arguments.
Ian has enough, and puts his principal opponents in their place.
What victory are you going to show these people when most of them have been killed, eh? A fluid link? Is this what you're going to hold up to them and say, thank you very much, this is what you fought and died for?
Now all they have to do is see if the Thals still can fight. And Chesterton has a begrudging idea on how to find out about that too. As it turns out, the best way to get people to want to fight is to really tick them off. Ian takes hold of the unguarded yet revered entire history of the planet and immediately assembles a mob. While Team TARDIS wanders over to watch curiously, Aladdin eloquently explains his unwavering anti-war philosophy.
Look at our planet. This was once a great world, full of ideas and art and invention. In one day it was destroyed. And you will never find one good reason why we should ever begin destroying everything again.
God, that was beautiful. Unfortunately, not what we wanted to hear right now, but beautiful nonetheless. Ian, very much in the poking the bear state of mind, threatens to take the records to the city and try to trade them for the link. Not quite believing his bluff, Aladdin steps back, insisting that none of his people will try to stop him. Alright, so they won't fight for property. Maybe their own people? An improving Ian wonders aloud if the Daleks would want to do experiments on the humanoids, and seizes Di and I from the crowd for the trade instead. This riles everyone up. After a flash of panic, Aladdin knocks Ian to the ground for sweet fall number 11. At least on the ground, Ian knows he succeeded.
So there is something you'll fight for?
Back in the city, the Daleks are having their own problems. Those who received anti-radiation treatments are experiencing psychosis and quickly dying.
Help me!
After ceasing all distribution, one thing to the Dalek leader is clear. Daleks are now dependent on radiation for their survival. With radiation resistance spreading, there's only one solution to keep the Dalek race, both cardboard cutout and otherwise, alive. Detonating another neutron bomb and drowning the planet in radiation again. Oh, what fun. After night comes, while most Thals sleep under the Skaro stars, Diana is awoken by restlessness, and noticing another lantern has yet to go out, joins Aladdin in his stress-induced insomnia. We've all been there. She asks if he's angry at himself for breaking from pacifism. He's more confused about knowing Ian was bluffing, yet acting anyway in a moment of impulse. He asks if she hates him now.
If you hadn't fought him, I think I would have hated you.
What a great answer! While they continue to consider if it is better to fight for life or die for peace, Barbara and Ganatus wander by, also untempted by sleep. After stretching his cloak across the roots for them to sit, Barbara asks what will happen next. He doesn't know, since it's the leader who will decide, leaving the tribe in an uncertain perdition. As Barbara notices a bright glow in the distance, Ganatus describes its source. A horrid lake full of mutations that claimed the lives of 3 of their own. Only he and his brother escaped. Recognizing anxiety in Barbara's face, he stops. But she doesn't mind the gruesome verbal depiction this far away from it. Ganatus says only an idiot would enter the city from the perilous lake on the other side. Foreshadowing! Meanwhile, every Dalek in Sector 3 has died, with Sector 2 also having taken the drugs. The leader directs them to have their sector locked inside a sonic chamber and direct all the heavily irradiated air they have their way, essentially gassing them to see if they die or not, cementing their theory. Isn't it a little weird that these fictional Nazis come in every color and size to be collected? Well, I guess they're no different than having Empire merch. The line of being fiction is strong with this one. But if they need radiation, they won't be able to leave the city. Ever.
We do not have to adapt to the environment. We will change the environment to suit us.
Well, that sounds kind of familiar. Morning has risen and it's time for Aladdin to make a decision. His first big one as leader. After asking Ian what his team intends to do,
We'll find our way into the city and take back our lost equipment.
he rationalizes joining their quest by the fact that their absence would be like killing their new friends themselves. He also conveys a very poignant conclusion.
There is no indignity in being afraid to die. But there is a terrible shame in being afraid to live.
God, the writing of this episode is just so good. But I'll discuss the writer at the end of discussing his creation. Aladdin joins Team TARDIS and announces that if his tribe do not wish to follow his lead, he will help them find a new leader. Now that is leadership. 4 Thals speak up, agreeing to join the assault, including Ganatus and his brother. Ganatus is already ready to go, stretching out a map to begin scheming at once.
You knew what my decision would be.
I could always have destroyed it if you decided differently.
I kinda love him. He points out the geography surrounding the city, and suggests trenching through the lakes to the mountains and entering the city from that direction. Aladdin recalls the dangers that lurk there, but Ganatus insists that that's where their true enemy's guard is weakest, and therefore the best area of attack. The Doctor suggests a split assault, with one group distracting the Daleks to the front, and the other assaulting the city from the rear. Looks like we've got a plan. Watching this all transpire from the safety of behind a camera, the Daleks wonder what the heck they're doing out there in the forest. There's no time to worry about that now, because the results of the gassing came in. The radiation saved Sector 2's lives! Yay? Well, it's time to take nuclear inventory before we blow it all in Kingdom Come and spread it like a wildfire. As night falls once again, the assault team has made their way to the beautiful swamp. Well, beautiful from a design standpoint, in my opinion. Shows back then didn't have a Marvel level of credits or budget, so a lot of credits gone missing with time. However, we do know 2 big picture designers for this episode, Jeremy Davis and Raymond Cusick. Davis worked on 3 Doctor Who stories and led a fruitful career, but who I want to focus on right now is Cusick. When Ridley Scott bailed on the project due to a conflict, Cusick was brought on as his replacement, allowing him the opportunity to become a time-space legend, and not just because of his amazing set work. Terry Nation wrote them, Shawcraft built them, but Cusick, he designed them. He's the visionary that gave the Daleks a distinct, iconic look that has transcended time, a core consistency to a species that struck fear for decades. His demonstrating their movement with a pepper pot has become legend. This was just his first foray into Who. He worked on several First Doctor stories as a designer and took many behind-the-scenes photos, often providing a record that otherwise would have been totally lost. The shame is he wasn't around longer. He was disappointed by the lack of credit for his work and compensation for his design. So many Daleks were decorating fans' rooms around the world, and yet he got nothing. He retired from his designer position in 1988 to pursue a historian hobby of documenting Napoleonic-era battles. To each his own. I hope it made him excruciatingly happy. He died of heart failure in his sleep in 2013. Through the gunk and grime, the team march on. But Andy seems a bit apprehensive. Probably because he's still traumatized by his last experience here, far more than his older brother Ganatus. Ganatus warns him not to concern the others with what happened before, and Antidus, acceptably irritable about the matter, agrees. While the rest of the party catches up to them, Ganonus advises that they should set up camp soon around here, before things get any geographically worse. With 2.5 days until the agreed-upon city assault time, Ian agrees, confident they can find a way to finish the journey. With all that settled, Ian turns to help Barbara.
I'm surprised you let her come.
I'd be more surprised if I could have stopped her.
Despite her stylish new thal mountaineering pants, she's tired. After 4 hours of hiking in this mess without music to distract me, I would be too. Still, with her old friend and coworker, maybe more, by her side, she marches on. As dead as the forest was, this swamp is very much alive. Finding a bit of dry earth, the six set up camp. They all scatter to search the nearby area for supplies, with Barbara in charge of food and getting this to the fire. I think he just wanted a little alone time. You know, while she and that other guy aren't official yet. While Ian's off washing his face, a strange growling roars through the swamp. Beasts start to rise from the pits. Ian flees Anne, with knowledge of monsters even closer than imagined. Christus is designated as guard, while the others struggle to find rest. Ganonus is the last to succumb to sleep, lamenting his people's nomadship before resting his head upon Barbara's leg for a nap. In the morning, Ian's woken by Ganonus. However, there's not much time for chit-chat before Elion rushes over to lead them both to something he's found. Pipes. A whole lot of pipes leading from the distant lake to the city. Ian speculates the Daleks must have a path down there to work on them. Elion points out the quickest way is direct, across the lake, but neither Ian or Ganonus feel the risk is worth it. While everyone returns to their camp for a nice morning brew, Elion goes lakeside to fill bags with water. Unfortunately, the water has its own plan. Hearing his agonizing scream, the group rushed to his aid. However, you'll all have to wait a few seconds to find out what happens, because now begins part 6 of the story, The Ordeal. Definitely my favorite part. Despite not beginning on a high note, because Elion was consumed by the lake. While the group accept the loss relatively very quickly. Knowing this mission dangerous from the start, Antidus is far more disturbed. Ganonus, to his credit, stays behind to comfort his brother a bit.
It must have happened very quickly.
Well, at least this time he tried. Together they join the others on their way to the mountains. Down below, as part of the distraction group, Susan's performing a bit of reconnaissance, watching the city through her grandfather's binoculars. She reports back to the others, the Doctor, Dianai, and Aladdin, on structural details she's observed like roads. Dianai adds each detail to the map as the other 3 take turns looking. The Doctor decides the best way of attack is to dismantle the Dalek radio and television signals. It should be difficult, but with advantages like mobility and surprise, he's confident. Aladdin, not so much, because if the Thals are planning for the Daleks...
I wish I knew what they were planning for us.
As they work, the Daleks learn more about the neutron bomb they plan to detonate. It should stretch 500 square miles, which is a bit of a weird measurement to use for multiple reasons, but okay. However, when the researcher Dalek reports it'll take 23 days to make, the leader is unsatisfied. He wants a flash past D-Day, and so he will pursue other methods of radiation spread. Well, I admire their ambition. Later in the day, Assault Team has made it to the cave systems of the mountains. However, they haven't been very fruitful in finding one useful. Ganonus and Barbara, partnered up in the pursuit of advancement, venture on through one last cave before having to regroup with the others. Apart from haunting whispers, I can't quite make out.
Look at that.
They find nothing. Well, I say they. As Ganonus is ready to turn back, Barbara hears the echo of dripping water. With the sound, they find a small passage leading further into the mountains. Ganonus decides to scout ahead, with his waist tied to a rope and Barbara keeping hold of its end. However, he won't go before Captain jacking it up a little bit more.
Well, we won't use one of the customs of your planet.
What's that?
Ladies first.
Well, I should hope not.
Before losing sight of him, Barbara shares a bit of advice Ian gave her.
Remember what Ian said, we're not to take any chances.
Do you always do what Ian says?
No, I don't.
Well, somebody's jealous. Barbara hands Loverboy the flashlight and he's off. After a few moments, Ganonus reports finding a 30-foot drop he plans to rappel down into. Upon his instruction, Barbara ties the very taut and sturdy rope to a nearby boulder and uses her foot to let a little bit slip by at a time. Unfortunately, she stumbles and Ganonus plummets. About 2 feet. Hearing her shouting, Ian and the rest of the Thals rush in to see what's wrong. By the time Ian calls down to him, Ganonus has recovered enough to answer. More than that, enough to ask.
What happened to Barbara?
After letting him know Barbara's A-okay, Ian shouts that he's going to send another rope down to let him climb back up. However, Ganonus suggests they all join him instead. because this cavern isn't quite the dead end all the others have been. While the Daleks start to notice their communications are all in disarray, getting no picture because the thaws are blinding their cameras, the Doctor, Susan, and Aladdin make their way towards the city. Good to know the distraction team are working hard while what's left of the assault team make their way through the dark caves. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are quite a few creative shots like this one throughout the story, and I love them all very much. Since the last breakdown, I've learned that the vision mixers were in charge of many visual effects, on top of live editing as they switch between cameras during the performance. If anyone's ever played the game Not for Broadcast, it's very much like that. Episodes were essentially plays where the cast acted through the whole script at once without cutting. This makes theater-loving me very happy. It was the vision mixer's job not to only follow a cue sheet, directing them when to switch between the 4 live cameras, but to alter the feed with previously recorded special shots, and input them in creative ways. Clive Doig was the vision mixer for this story, but he's going to be around a bit, so we'll talk about it some other time when the team's not in so tight a time crunch. While they march on, Antidus stops Ganidus for another one of their quick talks. He wants to go back because he's afraid of being trapped in the mountains forever, or, worse yet, being slaughtered by the Daleks. Because Ganidus has been pressuring him to conquer his fears out of sheer selfish pride, I would be on Ant-Man's side here. However...
We can't turn back now.
The others can't. But we could. Listen, they're going to die anyway. We could just go back and tell the others that the Daleks killed them.
Yeah, that kind of cowardice is not okay. After a brief struggle, Antidus collapses in pain. Unfortunately, he's not the only thing that collapses as Ian rushes over to pull him out of a cave in's way. No turning back now. Ian asks what happened, and Ganidus lies, protecting his brother from shame, or himself from her pride. Sadly, the Daleks do have some sort of surveillance in order back in the city, as they detect unusual vibrations across the grounds of their domain. Assuming quite safely that it's the Thals, the villains find themselves with the end feed element of surprise. But maybe the Daleks can be beaten to the sucker punch, as Susan finds a panel with a big old wire coming from it. This confirms the Doctor's theory that the whole place is powered by static electricity, including the Daleks through the floor. The cord also leads to the main antenna in a distance. After Susan lifts the protective panel, the Doctor smashes its insides with the tip of his cane, Biff Tannen style.
Hello? Hello, anybody home? Huh? Think, McFly, think!
The Doctor sends Aladdin to tell the other Thals to retreat, while he and Susan stay to mess with it some more. Aladdin doesn't feel quite so comfortable with abandoning them, but does as he's told. The Doctor then asks Susan for her TARDIS key, and with its strange alien metals, diverts the circuit. Science! He seems to be having a lot of fun messing with the Daleks.
That'll teach the Daleks to meddle in our affairs.
I'm glad he's loosened up a little. He even manages to damage their power supply even more. Unfortunately, the Doctor seems to suffer something I'm very familiar with myself.
But they must have a fault locator somewhere. We must get away from here.
My dear child, don't you realize what I've done? A few simple tools, a superior brain.
The need to brag about success. It always becomes our downfall. Back in the caverns, the group reach a drop. Unable to wander further without some thought and planning, they decide to rest for a bit. Ian and Ganidus, after some evaluation, decide the only way forward is the opposing cliff. While the ledge is narrow, it rounds the corner into another cavern. Ganidus suggests climbing down this side and then up the other, but based on the several seconds between dropping a pebble and hearing its landing, that's ruled out pretty quickly. Well, time to jump! With the rope tied around his waist, Ian's going first.
Good luck.
With a running start, he leaps and... makes it. He then serves as a sort of anchor for Ganidus, as he tosses over his rope and comes over next. Sidling around the corner, he finds a safe path forward and agrees the rest should follow. Ian stays behind to help them do so. While they're making progress, the Doctor and Susan are in timeout. The Doctor calls the Daleks out on murdering Nemesis and the genocide they're planning. However, the Daleks take their appallement with pride. So much so that this moment christens their iconic battle cry.
That's sheer murder.
No! Extermination!
Well, kind of. They're so excited they speak over each other with similar sentiments.
Tomorrow, we will be the monsters, we'll be the monsters of the planet.
Barbara's the next to make the jump below. After catching her breath while Ian slips the safety loop off her waist, she tries to slide around the corner, but finds out too late she went facing the wrong direction. Fair, I think. Facing the rock you can hold it, but facing away it's easier to keep all your weight on the ground, lowering the chance of a rock crumbling with your grip. Like this little accident after Ian helps pull her back and turn her around. He talks her around the corner and, knowing she's safe, throws the rope back across. After offering to let Antidus jump first, it's Christus who's next. Like Ian says, he makes it look easy. Probably because he's a giant. Anyway, the only one left now is Antidus. Ian throws the rope over, but the Thal is too busy staring at the endless abyss below to grab it.
Sorry. Bad throw, my fault.
Upon Ian's firm instruction the second toss, he catches it and ties it slowly and tightly around his waist. He gradually shuffles back before sprinting to jump the gap.
I'm ready whenever you are.
He reaches the cliff, but stumbles backward, falling and pulling Ian off his feet with him. Ian manages to take hold of the nearby boulder, but neither he nor Antidus can hold on forever. With this cliffhanger, will we lose our first companion in the clutches of death? Will the TARDIS ever be fixed? Well, let's find out right now, with the final episode of this story, The Rescue. Hearing the shouts of his brother and Ian, Antidus returns to help. They struggle, but Antidus has too much dead weight to hold up for long. The rope was just not made for gripping. They shout for Christus to come and add his strength to the mix, but Antidus has a different solution. In his final moment, he shows the bravery his brother always wanted him to have, as he saws at the rope and plummets into the nothing. Antidus mourns his brother as Ian recovers the rope, seeing the cut that saves his life. In the city, the Doctor and Susan are a bit more strained than earlier, listening to the Daleks' plan to purge the planet of all non-Dalek entities, and rebuild the planet to suit themselves. The plan is to poison all the oxygen in the air with radiation.
When do you intend to put this into operation?
Now!
Well, there's one good thing you can say about the Daleks. They are certainly not procrastinators. While morale is low for the distraction team, it's arguably much worse for the assault team. Down yet another member, they found yet another dead end. Again, this isn't so optimistic anymore.
Can't you see there isn't any sense in it anymore?
Maybe his brother was right after all. Now Antidus volunteered in the beginning of this journey. He knew the dangers, just not how much they would affect him, mentally and physically. Maybe he just wanted to finally please his brother. Before I can rattle on about character motivations and theories much more, the lantern starts to dim out. You'll have to start heading back now if they don't want to jump the chasm blind. To save battery, they decide to turn it off on the safe bit of terrain, which turns out to be a blessing in disguise because they discover another mysterious light source in the torch's absence. Digging at the wall it's coming from, they discover the pipe workroom on the other side. Congratulations, team! You've made it! Night has now fallen, and while the Dalek systems are still visibly down, the Doctor and Susan haven't returned. Aladdin and Diane assume quite correctly they've been captured. Time for the simple farmers to take up arms again in order to rescue their friends. Listening to the Daleks progress toward another neutronic annihilation of Skaro, Susan and the Doctor are becoming more and more distraught by their imprisonment. So desperate to stop their plans and save themselves, the man puts his most treasured possession on the line.
I have a ship capable of crossing the barriers of space and time.
He tells them about the TARDIS and its traveling capabilities, using the stolen fluid link's complexity as proof. He offers to explain its workings and, to the shock of Whovians viewing for the canonical future, help them create one of their own. That cowardice is unimaginable now, but everyone was young once, even the Doctor.
Coward. Any day.
Unfortunately, he makes a mistake in revealing the ship's location. Now they don't need them alive to find it once they can leave the city again. The Doctor continues to plead, insisting only he can operate the TARDIS, but it's no use. He's lost. As the Dalek sensors detect movement within the city walls, he and Susan can only pray that the Thals make it in time. But it's the humans that make it inside first, along with their companions Ganidus and Christus. Despite their experience inside the facility while they were captives, they're struggling to find a way forward, with every tunnel and turn looking the same. Cheap set design, or brilliant modular building by an efficient creativist species? Probably a little bit of both. They manage to pull themselves back behind a corner before a Dalek spots them. Not only that, they overhear him announcing that the Thals are assaulting the city. They'll have to find a way to the control room quickly before too many lives are lost. Unfortunately, with their cameras, the Daleks see them coming. While the element of surprise has been lost, so has a camera in despair, so I guess you win some, you lose some? They decide they'll just have to blow everything up right now, and, despite the Doctor's beseeching, they start the countdown.
100!
It's gonna be a long countdown. In the halls, Aladdin meets up with what's left of the assault team, and informs them of his theory that the Daleks have the Doctor and Susan. While Ganidus informs his leader about the losses, Ian and Barbara argue over what to try and find first, the control room or the others. unaware, of course, that they're both in the same place. They pause the debate, however, when a Dalek over the intercom orders all Daleks to return to the control room on level 10 and calls for all other floors to be sealed. Being just one floor below, it's hardly time to give up now, even as the door starts swinging closed all around them. Ian manages to hold the last one open for the others to crawl through, with Barbara racing ahead to stop the next one from sealing before it's too late. Upstairs, is it still called the upstairs when there's no stairs? The Daleks increase the power of the doors to make them harder to fight against. Also, the countdown passes 50.
49. 48.
I told you it was slow. Barbara manages to keep the door open long enough for the boys to rush over and take hold. The problem is, with the extra power pushing down, she's now stuck halfway through with Ganidus. She manages to slip out, but Ganidus remains where he is, keeping the gap a constant size as the rest take turns slipping through. The force is crushing, but with Barbara's help pulling them all through quicker, they make it. Thalls start to go down in other parts of the building as the countdown passes the lower 40s. But with a team within eyesight of HQ, Hope has not abandoned us yet. Cool and composed, they creep down the corridor, hiding behind door frames and pillars, until Ian and Aladdin make it to their imprisoned friends. Barbara's the one to start the actual assault, hurling a bit of broken something at the leader before taking cover. I don't know where she got it, because she's holding it in the control center approach, but not a second before. Maybe she found some Dalekanium somewhere. Who knows? What I do know is, when a Dalek is sent after her, it's quickly ambushed. One down. Chaos now ensues, as while the newly freed Doctor and Susan run out, more Thalls make it to the control room. It's somehow both climactic and anticlimactic at the same time, which makes it a beautiful classic Who battle. Thalls are flying in and Daleks are falling. Phasers are set to 95% chance of immediate kill for some reason, because this 5%er lives long enough to slam his attacker into the control panel. Everything, the bomb, the power, the static at the floor, it all goes down. While Ian's having the time of his life kicking pepper pots around, a Dalek begs the Doctor to restore power, or the entire species would die.
Even if I wanted to, I don't know how.
The Dalek lets out a final shriek before plunging into eternal silence. Aladdin is relieved the 500-year war is over, but the Doctor isn't of the same mind.
No doubt you will have other wars to fight.
Well, someone's a pessimist. While the Doctor sets out to investigate the reactors for signs of a possible leak before breathing easy, Ian grabs the fluid link from the console. They leave while Barbara and Aladdin start carrying out the dead and the wounded, including Christus. Susan tells Ganidus of the things the Daleks had that could help the Thalls, like artificial sunlight for crops. News of the species-saving technology is bittersweet to say the least.
If only there'd been some other way.
Back at camp celebrating a hard-fought-for peace, Aladdin inspects some new technology when a smiling Doctor wanders by with a bit of insight.
It's useless. Throw it away. Forget it. Unless you want to live in a shell like our dead friend.
When asked where he comes from to know so much, he evades the question, expressing jealousy instead over the opportunity of rebuilding a world. Also, a bit of nostalgia.
I'm afraid I'm much too old to be a pioneer, although I was once amongst my own people.
To give a parting bit of extra hope, the Doctor informs them that the soil isn't quite so dead as it looks. It could feed healthy flowers within a generation. Not entirely done hearing himself talk, he delivers one final bit of poetic, iconic sentiment.
You wanted advice, you said. I never give it, never. But I might just say this to you. Always search for truth. My truth is in the stars, and yours is here.
Upon parting, he suggests that he may visit their grandchildren one day to see how well they've done. Susan spins on by, showing off the cloak Diana gave her as a parting gift, and Ian, after laughing at her clumsiness, asks about the fluid link. It's back in place under the console and full of mercury, so they're ready to go! The three of them shake hands and say goodbye to everyone, passing Barbara and Ganidus on their way back inside the TARDIS. Their goodbye is far more intimate. He gives her some fabric to make something beautiful out of, but as she thanks him softly for it, Susan calls out for her. They walk to the double doors together, and he gently kisses her hands farewell. Way to go, Barbara! Not only did she tame a prototype Harkness, but she initiated the first real kiss of Doctor Who, an interesting pretty feminist for the 60s development. Anyway, together, Ganidus, Aladdin, and Diana watch the strange blue police box fade away with their new friends inside. All is quiet inside the TARDIS as the four wander about the console until it explodes, sending them all unconscious to the floor. An eerie mechanical grinding brings us to the story's end. Here's a list of all of the cast and crew that worked on this story. My thanks to them all. Having witnessed the completion of his first Doctor Who serial, let's finally talk about Terry Nation. Born in Cardiff, Nation wrote for Associated London Scripts during the 50s, composing hundreds of radio plays for comedians. In 1962, he left to work for famed UK comedian Tony Hancock, but tempers reached a peak when his scripts were never chosen for use, leading to a split in '63. It's this failing partnership that led to Nation accepting the writer position on a mysterious new science fiction show still in development. As soon as the story arc started to broadcast, his creation became a cultural icon. They were so popular, after the story The Power of the Daleks, he expressed his intention to start a spin-off featuring the Daleks in a group called the Space Security Service. I can't talk about the spin-off in detail right now without spoiling future episodes. When the BBC rejected it, Nation left, taking his Dalek copyright with him. Copyrights were really weird in early Who. I'll explain why another time. Before that point, there was at least one Dalek story a series. After his departure, they became much more rare. He did return in 1973 for the third Doctor story, Planet of the Daleks, and wrote 3 more Dalek stories, including the 4th Doctor story, Genesis of the Daleks, frequently cited as one of the greatest stories of all. He also wrote 2 non-Dalek stories during his run with Doctor Who, The Keys of Marinus, which I love and is coming up very soon, and Android Invasion. Aside from Doctor Who, he wrote 4 shows on both sides of the Atlantic, ranging from The Avengers, not those Avengers, and Blake 7 to Survivors and MacGyver. He had moved to LA in 1980, but never saw as much success in the US as he did in the UK. He died from emphysema in 1997. Doctor Who was initially approved of for a 13-episode trial. The first story, An Unearthly Child, took up 4 episodes of that, and, with a lackluster premiere due in significant part to the assassination of JFK, only received mediocre ratings. The Daleks nearly doubled them, effectively saving Doctor Who, and almost 60 years later, it's not hard to see why. While I do think the story starts off a bit slow, probably in part to take up time and lead to the historic cliffhanger of episode 1, it certainly does pick up by episode 3. From that point on, action and exposition are perfectly balanced. Character development among the group expands to include Barbara, proving she's not just some damsel in distress. Despite having some lone scenes, Susan's character still leaves much to be desired. She's just naive girl, and I know she can be more. Aside from her, there's a lot of great writing in this story, giving more side characters character than the previous story, and so building a better world. Worlds are more than just the planet, after all. The cinematography is also extraordinary, making an already interesting plot fascinating with tense angles, world-scaling tracking, and unique first-person shots. In my personal rating, the Dalek has easily taken the #1 spot. Fair, there's only 2 stories in the running right now, but I think it's going to last in that position for a little bit. Next up on Doctor Who Breakdowns, we'll be covering The Edge of Destruction, a rare classic Who 2-part story that's kind of really weird. Until then, this is Punxsutawn signing off. Allons-y!